The transition heading into May 1st has sparked a significant surge of concern among retirees, and for entirely valid reasons. A verified Social Security modification is now scheduled to go into effect, and it is already generating worry, bewilderment, and pressing inquiries across households that rely on monthly payments. This is not a trivial tweak hidden in administrative documents or a silent bureaucratic revision. It is an alteration that directly affects payment frameworks, timing assumptions, and review processes that millions count on to handle necessities like housing, groceries, prescriptions, and utility bills. What intensifies this particular moment is the pace at which false information is circulating alongside official announcements, leaving countless people uncertain about what is factual and what is speculation. Retirees who have navigated the system for years are now encountering notices, changes, and policy explanations arriving in batches, each carrying consequences that warrant careful attention. The most critical shift is not simply about figures on a document, but about how qualification assessments, distribution timing, and recalculation methods are being strengthened or reconfigured. For those surviving on fixed earnings, even a modest delay or recalculation can upset an entire month's financial planning. The approaching modification is not theoretical. It connects directly to everyday survival choices. That is why the May 1st revision is being debated with seriousness across financial networks, advisory panels, and retirement neighborhoods as individuals attempt to comprehend what is shifting, who is impacted, and how rapidly the consequences will materialize. The verified revision going into effect around May 1st focuses on multiple operational modifications within the Social Security infrastructure that collectively shape how retirement payments are handled and examined. One of the primary areas impacted involves tighter verification coordination between documented income information and payment computations. This means the system is putting stronger emphasis on live cross-referencing of earnings data, tax filings, and payment qualification boundaries. For certain retirees, particularly those who continue engaging in part-time employment or additional income activities, this produces a more thoroughly supervised environment where inconsistencies are identified more rapidly than previously. The purpose driving this modification is to minimize overpayments and guarantee precision. But the real-world consequence is that even slight discrepancies can now activate review notifications or temporary freezes until confirmation is finalized. Another substantial element of the May transition involves reconfiguration of payment scheduling coordination. While monthly payments continue unchanged, the internal processing timelines used to release payments are being compressed. This does not indicate payments are being decreased, but instead that the timing framework is becoming more uniform across distribution periods. In reality, this can produce minor differences in deposit arrival depending on banking platforms, confirmation standing, and processing sequences. For retirees who count on exact delivery dates, even a variation of a day or two can generate financial difficulty, especially when obligations are programmed automatically around anticipated deposits. There is additionally a heightened emphasis on qualification reassessment procedures. The system is reinforcing cyclical review mechanisms that confirm whether beneficiaries continue to satisfy eligibility criteria based on age, disability classification where relevant, and income documentation accuracy. These evaluations are not unprecedented, but the regularity and automation sophistication supporting them are being elevated upward. That means additional retirees may receive paperwork demands or electronic alerts requesting verification of current personal or financial details. Neglecting to reply swiftly can lead to temporary suspension until files are resolved, which is why consciousness of official communications has become essential. Simultaneously, cost of living adjustment coordination is being woven more closely into the continuing payment framework. Rather than being handled as an isolated annual recalculation occasion, specific components of adjustment monitoring are now being observed more perpetually. This assists the system in staying reactive to inflation trends, but it additionally introduces more regular internal reconfiguration that may appear subtly in statement revisions or payment itemizations. While the comprehensive purpose is resilience against escalating living expenses, The changeover phase can seem perplexing to those monitoring monthly variations closely. A notable worry among retirees is the communication deficit that frequently accompanies system revisions of this magnitude. Alerts may arrive through postal mail, digital portals, or automated system notifications, and not every recipient engages with each medium equally. This produces circumstances where significant revisions are overlooked or misinterpreted, resulting in avoidable alarm or postponed responses. Financial consultants are stressing the significance of consistently reviewing official communication channels, and confirming contact details remain accurate since even a minor, outdated element can disrupt notification transmission. The wider consequence of this May 1st modification is emotional as much as monetary. Retirees who have spent years functioning within a foreseeable system are now confronting a phase where confirmation, timing, and recalculation mechanisms are growing more fluid. Foreseeability is being substituted with adaptability, and while that enhances long-range precision, it amplifies short-range doubt. Households that plan meticulously around established deposit dates may experience this transition more acutely than others, particularly if they maintain automated financial commitments linked to particular days of the month. An additional dimension of the modification pertains to fraud deterrence and identity safeguarding improvements. The system is broadening its detection criteria to recognize irregular activity trends more effectively. This encompasses misaligned banking information, contradictory documentation histories, and atypical payment claim patterns. While this bolsters overall protection, it additionally means rightful recipients may intermittently be caught in confirmation cycles that demand supplementary paperwork to settle. These precautions are structured to preserve funds, but they can momentarily restrict access during evaluation stages. Crucially, no comprehensive decrease in payments has been validated as part of this revision. The modifications are architectural and procedural rather than reductive. However, the impression of interference surfaces because even procedural modifications can shape how and when resources are obtained. For people existing month to month, timing is practically as consequential as quantity, and that is where apprehension is focused. In functional terms, retirees are being counseled to keep records current, reply rapidly to any formal requests, and observe their payment timetables attentively in the weeks following May 1st. Any postponement or inconsistency should be investigated directly through official avenues rather than presumed or disregarded. Banking institutions are additionally anticipated to undergo a brief adaptation interval as they synchronize their platforms with the revised processing architecture. What distinguishes this revision most is the movement toward closer integration of data timing and qualification confirmation into a unified, more adaptive system. That integration enhances long-range precision and diminishes systemic mistakes, but it additionally shrinks the margin for postponement or negligence on the recipient's end. Every particular from earnings documentation to contact details now bears more immediate significance in establishing smooth payment transmission. As May 1st draws nearer, focus continues to intensify because the modification is not confined to a solitary regulation or figure. It embodies a wider tightening of how Social Security payments are administered and allocated. For retirees, the central difficulty will be adjusting to a system that responds more swiftly, confirms more regularly, and calibrates more persistently than in earlier years. The dependability of payments persists, but the architecture encircling them is entering a more vigorous phase of oversight, and that transition is what is fueling extensive conversation and apprehension. The May 1st Social Security revision is not functioning in isolation. It exists within a broader transformation in how payment systems are being supervised, tracked, and rectified in real time. What retirees are witnessing now is the outcome of a prolonged shift from fixed annual evaluations to continuous confirmation systems that depend on accelerated data coordination and stricter compliance assessments. This transformation impacts how consistency is experienced even when actual payment totals remain unaltered. Consistency in retirement earnings is not solely about what is disbursed, but additionally about how dependably it is transmitted, and that dependability is now being restructured. One of the most consequential results of this revision is how it transforms the connection between recipients and the system itself. Previously, most retirees engaged with Social Security through relatively foreseeable patterns, established deposit dates, occasional cost of living modifications, and infrequent alerts that demanded minimal participation. That arrangement fostered a sense of habit. With the revised modifications taking hold, that habit is becoming more contingent. Instead of depending entirely on rigid schedules, the system now functions with more adaptive triggers that can modify processing based on refreshed financial information, identity authentication checks, and qualification verifications. This does not signify volatility in the context of universal payment reduction. Rather, it introduces a more attuned operational structure where individual situations are evaluated with increased regularity. For retirees with spotless, stable records, the system may proceed to operate without perceptible interruption. However, for those with varied earnings patterns, recent life transitions, or obsolete information on record, the probability of receiving confirmation requests escalates. That is where perception transforms, because even brief administrative pauses can register as monetary instability. When monthly responsibilities hinge on exact timing, another dimension of consequence is emotional. Retirement strategizing has perpetually hinged on assurance, and any fracture in that assurance tends to magnify unease. Even when formal declarations confirm that payments continue securely, the emergence of additional verifications, alerts, and procedural revisions can manufacture doubt. This is especially accurate when communication is scattered across varied platforms. Some recipients depend on physical correspondence, others on digital dashboards, and some on banking notifications when revisions are not transmitted uniformly across all platforms. Deficiencies in comprehension develop rapidly. The strengthening of confirmation systems additionally mirrors a wider policy trajectory, minimizing inaccuracies and blocking improper disbursements. Across the years, administrations have encountered mounting pressure to guarantee correctness in entitlement initiatives. That pressure converts into more mechanized verifications, swifter data comparisons, and more rigorous validation standards. While these enhancements are conceived to safeguard the soundness of the system, they unavoidably generate an adjustment interval where recipients must acclimate to revised expectations. A pivotal observation frequently absent from public dialogue is that system enhancements like this are not abrupt inventions. They are customarily introduced incrementally over time, but their consequences become apparent at particular activation moments, such as the May 1st revision. That is why scrutiny intensifies at these junctures. The foundational infrastructure has frequently already evolved, but the operational implementation becomes evident only when protocols begin to tangibly influence processing sequences and communication cadences. For retirees still generating supplementary earnings, the modifications are especially pertinent. Even minor fluctuations in declared income can now interact more immediately with payment calculations or evaluation triggers. This does not mechanically diminish payments, but it elevates the likelihood of confirmation procedures. In practice, this translates to additional documentation demands, expanded cross-verification, and conceivably extended processing durations during revisions or modifications. The system is endeavoring to synchronize real-time earnings information more precisely with payment qualification, which is technically streamlined but operationally more taxing for recipients. There is additionally a structural refinement being executed in how timing is coordinated across payment intervals. Historically, fluctuations in deposit timing were predominantly attributable to banking distinctions and batch processing calendars. The revised structure aspires to standardize internal processing more rigorously, diminishing variability. However, during changeover intervals, this can seem erratic before it achieves full equilibrium. That transitional irregularity is frequently what individuals detect first, even if the extended objective is enhanced dependability. Concurrently, fraud identification systems are growing more reactive. This is component of a broader modernization campaign across financial payment programs. Identity authentication instruments, pattern identification systems, and anomaly detection frameworks are now more embedded into the processing pipeline. While this fortifies defense against misuse and exploitation, it additionally raises the possibility of authentic accounts being marked for evaluation if their behavior diverges from anticipated patterns. These markers are not inherently disciplinary. They are precautionary, but they still necessitate time and engagement from the recipient to address. What renders this juncture meaningful is the convergence of all these modifications occurring in tight succession. Individually, each alteration might appear negligible. Collectively, they produce a discernible transformation in how the system performs. Retirees are not reacting to an isolated rule modification, but to a grouping of operational improvements that jointly reshape experience. The extended objective behind these revisions is system correctness, fiscal soundness, and enhanced alignment with actual world information. From a governance perspective, this trajectory is aligned with wider modernization campaigns across public payment systems internationally. The obstacle resides in the changeover interval where users must adjust more rapidly than the system formerly demanded of them. In functional terms, the most essential conclusion is that consistency in payment totals persists, but consistency in administrative operation is transforming. That differentiation is important. Earnings may remain unmodified, but the route they traverse to arrive, the verifications they undergo, and the timing architecture surrounding them are growing more fluid. Grasping that transformation helps clarify why focus around May 1st is uncommonly elevated. For numerous retirees, the adjustment interval will conclude without substantial interruption, particularly if personal documentation is already up to date and earnings reporting is uniform. In those instances, the system functions inconspicuously in the background, executing verifications without demanding regular intervention. For others, the changeover may register more prominently, especially if they receive documentation demands or encounter minor fluctuations in timing during preliminary implementation stages. Over time, systems like this generally stabilize following initial modifications. Processing grows more foreseeable again once revised protocols are completely assimilated into standard procedures. That stabilization is a significant component of the life cycle of any administrative enhancement. What registers as disruptive in the near term frequently becomes undetectable once normalized. It is additionally essential to acknowledge that revisions like this are infrequently structured to curtail access or restrict payments. The concentration is typically on rectification, confirmation, and coordination with refreshed data benchmarks. While the experience of receiving alerts or undergoing evaluations can register as invasive, the fundamental purpose is to diminish long-range inaccuracies and fortify dependability of disbursements. As the system proceeds to develop, the anticipation is that communication pathways will additionally advance. Superior digital incorporation, more transparent alerts, and better coordinated notifications are characteristically introduced alongside confirmation enhancements. These advancements aspire to diminish bewilderment and guarantee that recipients obtain precise information in a punctual fashion. However, during changeover intervals, communication deficiencies can still materialize, which is why consciousness and consistent monitoring of formal revisions remain significant. The most pragmatic reaction for retirees during this stretch is vigilance rather than alarm. Examining statements, confirming contact details are present, and replying without delay to any formal demands are uncomplicated measures that avert most interruptions. These actions are not unprecedented, but their consequence magnifies under a more adaptive system. What surfaces from this complete transformation is a more defined portrait of how retirement systems are evolving in composition. They are growing more information-driven, more regularly refreshed, and more tightly synchronized with real-time monetary data. That trajectory is improbable to reverse. Instead, it will proceed to polish how payments are transmitted and supervised. The May 1st revision, accordingly, should not be interpreted as a standalone occurrence, but as segment of a continuing evolution toward a more unified system, comprehending that framework diminishes doubt and repositions the modification as procedural progression rather than abrupt upheaval. The payments themselves remain grounded, but the structure encircling them is advancing into a more energetic and responsive stage, and that is the genuine narrative behind this moment.